I appreciate you coming back to our channel. Dole, Daystar's future is in Lamb. Is this the end of the network Marcus and Joni created, or is there something even more sinister going on behind closed doors? Stay tuned to find out what's truly going on as Daystar's biggest shows are departing one by one, and the reasons for their departure are more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Behind the scenes, chaos is brewing, and fans are demanding answers. The Lamb family, led by Marcus and Joni, was revered, admired, and seen as an example of faith and family unity. However, after Marcus Lamb's death, everything began to change, and the cracks in that flawless image began to show. Previously, Daystar was a shining light in Christian broadcasting, and people tuned in for hope, encouragement, and teachings they could trust. It began with whispers. Joni Lamb's abrupt remarriage to Doug Weiss caught many people off guard, especially so soon after Marcus's death. Viewers and ministry partners started to doubt the timing and wisdom of that decision because it seemed too quick and abrupt, leaving many perplexed about what was actually going on behind the scenes. Then, the accusations of a sexual assault cover-up surfaced. The tension only increased as more voices started to question Daystar's leadership and the decisions being made within the network behind the smiles on camera. Joni and others denied any wrongdoing and called the claims lies, intended to destroy their family. The damage was already done, and people began to wonder who to believe and whether the ministry they trusted was hiding something. There was conflict and strained relationships within the Daystar family, despite the public seeing polished broadcasts and confident messages. Longtime supporters felt deceived, and ministry partners were unsure about whether to continue their association with Daystar. The storm inside Daystar was no longer a secret issue. Instead, it became something that church leaders and the Christian community at large had to deal with. Could not ignore the fact that what had once been a reputable platform was now being questioned regarding its leadership, integrity, and dedication to the principles it had always taught for many. Daystar no longer felt like the safe haven it once was, leaving people to question whether the ministry could ever fully recover from the mounting tension. It began quietly with the removal of one name from the Daystar schedule, but soon it became impossible to ignore as high perfectible pastors, evangelists, and ministries started to depart from Daystar, a network that had long been regarded as a leading voice in Christian media. What started out as a trickle turned into a wave that rocked Daystar's foundation and raised serious concerns among Christians about what was going on behind the scenes for many viewers. What was a daily source of inspiration, worship, and education. Families would congregate around the television to watch sermons and worship sessions, feeling a part of a wider religious community. The Lamb family, particularly Marcus and Joni, had founded Daystar with the goal of bringing the gospel to the world, and for a while they succeeded in doing so. However, as scandals and controversies started to surround the viewer Frau, when Joni Lamb remarried Doug Weiss, it caused tension, confusion, and concern within the Daystar community. Many supporters felt that it was too soon and that the ministry and family needed more time to grieve. Marcus Lamb's death was the first significant shake in the foundation. His leadership, charisma, and vision had guided the network, and his passing left a hole that was difficult to fill. Process such a huge loss before beginning a new chapter. This decision alone caused some people to doubt Daystar's leadership, but it was just the start. Following accusations of financial misconduct and sexual assault cover-ups within the network, which Joni and others denied, Daystar's reputation was already suffering from the trust that viewers and ministry partners had previously freely placed in the organization. Had strings tied to it, and questions that would not go away made it obvious that many prominent leaders could no longer be associated with Daystar. In light of these circumstances, reputable evangelist and pastor Greg Laurie, who is well known for Harvest Christian Fellowship and the Harvest Crusades, decided to remove his long-running show from Daystar. Greg Laurie had spent decades establishing trust with Jack Hibbs, another well-known pastor from Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, also decided to remove his show Real Life with Jack Hibbs from the network after he left, sending a strong message that the situation at Daystar was too serious to ignore. His departure was especially significant because he had previously stated support for Daystar, but as the controversies grew, even he was unable to ignore the direction. Jordan Easley, the senior pastor of First Baptist Cleveland, also decided to leave the network after realizing that the escalating problems at Daystar did not fit with the principles of honesty and loyalty he wished to maintain in his ministry. Other prominent figures such as Ray Comfort of Way of the Master and Jesse Dopants also left Daystar, voicing their concerns through their actions caused even ministries with long-standing relationships to Daystar to reevaluate their alliances. Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, Jack Graham, Brenda Cunningham, a man, and Lance Wallen Hank all made the difficult decision to cut off their connections with the network. These decisions were not taken lightly. Each departure symbolized years of partnership, trust, and common objectives of sharing the gospel, but the growing concerns about the company's leaders were unable to continue their support because of Daystar's leadership and direction. As more names were added to the list of departures and the message became clearer, something was wrong and people were no longer willing to turn a blind eye. The total number of ministries and leaders who decided to leave Daystar increased to 25, a startling number that could not be written off as a coincidence or a minor incident. Many viewers saw these reputable voices leave Daystar, which validated their own worries and validated the uneasiness they had felt as scandals started to surface. This wave of high-profile exits was not just about individuals leaving a network, it was also about leaders making a statement about integrity, accountability, and the need for transparency within Christian media. The departures served as a wake-up call and a reminder that their allegiance should be to Christ and the truth, not to a brand or a platform. They had to make difficult decisions about whether to continue supporting Daystar when so many of the leaders they trusted had decided to leave. Was it right to continue watching and contributing to a network that was engulfed in accusations and controversies that weren't being publicly addressed in a way that restored trust for some? For Daystar, these departures created an unavoidable challenge. Losing high-profile ministries meant losing viewers' trust and financial support, which raised concerns about the network's leadership and future. It was a time for introspection on what values really mattered and what accountability should look like within the church and its ministries. Reputational harm brought about by the behind-the-scenes controversy. These departures also affected the employees and those who had been devoted to Daystar. Many of them were torn between their commitment to the Lamb family and their personal beliefs. For some, this meant debating whether to stay or go, and for others, it meant discreetly leaving because they didn't want to be a part of a network that no longer reflected the wave of high peripheral exits that struck Daystar, marked a turning point for the network and the larger Christian community. It served as a reminder that accountability is important, that leaders must live honorably, and that ministries must be open and honest if they want to keep the trust of their supporters. This wave is not just about a network in crisis, the future now hangs in the balance, with the question of whether they will address the issues that led to these exits, or if the wave will continue to grow, leaving the network as a shadow of what it once was as ministries continued to leave Daystar in a wave that shocked many in the community. This story about the church, the need for accountability, and the call for believers to stand for truth, even when it is difficult for Daystar. One question in the Christian community became more pressing in the minds of viewers and believers worldwide. Why are some leaders remaining silent when respected voices like Greg Laurie, Jack Hibbs, and others have resigned? Are other well-known pastors and ministries still opting to remain affiliated with a network that is enmeshed in scandal and controversy? At first, people wanted to give these leaders the benefit. Since they had founded their ministries on biblical teachings, prayer, and faith, and had made bold statements about integrity and accountability from the pulpit, many people assumed they would speak out when Daystar's sexual assault cover-ups, financial misconduct, and leadership failures came to light. They continued to keep quiet about some of the biggest names like T.D. Jakes, Joel Austin, Kenneth Copeland, and Bill Winston became unavoidable and continue to show up on Daystar's programming. These leaders have enormous platforms that impact millions of people worldwide, and many of their followers look to them for advice on how to react in times of crisis. However, their silence has left believers perplexed and disappointed because they expected more people to follow them. It started to question whether these leaders were worried about losing their platforms because Daystar, in spite of the controversies, continues to reach millions of viewers. For many ministries, exposure is linked to donations, book sales, and event promotions, so the fear of losing that reach can be strong, and the thought that money might be influencing decisions weighs heavily on those who wanted to think the best of these leaders, while others conjectured that it was about preserving influence. Being on Daystar keeps these leaders in the public eye, and for some, abandoning them could feel like a step backward. Influence is a powerful motivator, and in a world where ministry and personal branding are frequently entwined, it's easy to see how difficult the decision to leave could be. Some leaders who have centered their lives and identities around their public ministries may feel that the best way to avoid controversy is to remain silent in the hopes that the situation will pass without affecting their ministries. they may also believe that it is not their duty to discuss the problems facing another ministry, persuading themselves that silence equates to peace. But for many believers who are watching, silence feels when leaders who advocate for justice, truth, and protecting the weak remain silent in the face of serious accusations. It raises doubts about their sincerity and causes believers to wonder if the people they trusted are willing to overlook the truth. This is similar to complicity, which feels like a betrayal of the values these leaders have preached for years. In addition to the leaders' earlier remarks regarding accountability and truth, many of these pastors have boldly spoken about standing for righteousness, even when it's difficult. They have delivered sermons about the importance of integrity, transparency, and caring for the vulnerable. But when faced with a situation that demands those very qualities, their silence is particularly perplexing. Actions, many people choose to keep quiet, leaving their followers feeling disappointed and uncertain. This silence has also led to division within the church, with some believers feeling betrayed and angry, while others attempt to defend the leaders' choices by arguing that they must know what they're doing or that it is not their place to get involved. This division makes it more difficult for the church to serve as a witness in the world. The leaders' continued presence on Daystar raises difficult but necessary questions for people to see Christ's love and truth through his people. Are they staying because of financial ties? Are they afraid of losing influence? Do they really think it's not their place to speak up even when the church's reputation and the safety of the vulnerable are at stake? These are difficult questions, but others may be waiting for more information or hoping that Daystar will resolve the issues internally. But as the days turn into weeks and the weeks into months, it becomes more difficult to defend silence, and the harm to trust grows deeper for many believers. These are questions that need to be asked. Some leaders may feel stuck, unsure of how to leave without causing chaos within their own ministries, called to consider whether their allegiance is to Christ and his truth or to personalities and platforms. It serves as a reminder that leaders, no matter how well respected, are fallible human beings, and that the church is called to be a light in the darkness, standing for justice and truth even when it is uncomfortable. They also serve as a reminder that the church needs accountability. When scandals occur, leaders should seek transparency and take responsibility for the influence they carry. Ultimately, the Christian community must decide whether to continue supporting and following leaders who remain silent in the face of scandals. Ministry should not be built around a single person or platform, but rather around Christ and his mission. As this Daystar situation continues to unfold, believers around the world are watching, praying, and hoping that leaders will have the courage to speak the truth and to live their lives. Will they demand accountability and transparency even from those they admire? Or will the church be a place where truth is valued above comfort, where the vulnerable are protected, and where integrity is more important than influence? When scandals occur in places like Daystar, it hurts a great deal because many people trusted that network and its leaders for years. Families tuned in to seek encouragement and instruction, and while the silence may be loud right now, it doesn't have to be the last word. The church has a chance to demonstrate to the world what it means to stand for what is right, to care for the hurting, and to honor Christ above all else. It felt safe, like a spiritual home where believers could grow in faith and worship that helped them feel closer to God. However, when claims of cover-ups, hurried remarriages, and dubious decisions surface, it shakes people to their core, leaving them wondering, how could this happen in a place meant to share Christ? This isn't just about Daystar, it's about what happens. The church was never intended to be about fame, power, or creating personal kingdoms. Rather, it was meant to reflect Jesus, protect the weak, and bring light into a dark world. When scandals occur, they serve as a reminder of what really matters, leading believers to ask, have we made idols out of leaders and platforms instead of keeping our eyes on Jesus? Many people feel deceived not only by the leaders who have failed, but also by the leaders' silence in the hopes that the problems will be resolved. This silence can be perceived as betrayal, giving the impression that the principles of accountability and honesty that were emphasized on stage were merely words. It is particularly painful when it comes from people who have invested a lot of time and energy into the situation. Jesus cared for the hurting, defended the outcasts, spoke the truth even when it was unpopular, and stood up to religious leaders who were more powerful than him. The church has the option to either allow scandals like these to drive people away from faith, or use them as a wake-up call to return to the core lessons Jesus taught. Focused more on power than people, the church is called to uphold the same standards of integrity in our daily lives. This includes leaders being open and honest, even when it is uncomfortable, speaking out when something is wrong, even if doing so puts their reputation or influence at risk, and keeping in mind that ministry is about serving people, not developing a personal brand, protecting those who are unable to protect themselves. For many believers, witnessing what has transpired with Daystar serves as a moment to assess one's own faith, and serves as a reminder that no matter how charismatic or successful someone appears, leaders can fail, but Jesus never will. Ministries may veer off course, but the message never changes. It's acceptable to feel hurt and disappointed, but don't let that stop you. Renault on don't blitz the people don't walk and for. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers, views, donations, and applause, but ministry is not about being seen. It's about carrying out your duties faithfully, even when no one notices. Let it push you away from the faith you once held dear, and instead into a relationship with Jesus, who is always faithful. Because integrity is what true leadership looks like. Leaders must choose to influence others with humility and an understanding that they are being looked to for guidance. The Daystar situation has demonstrated that accountability matters, and that it is deeply important. It is not disrespectful to demand transparency from leaders, nor is it unloving. In fact, it is biblical. The Bible is filled with exhortations to examine ourselves, walk in the light, and live lives above reproach. These calls are not meant to destroy the church. Rather, they are meant to strengthen it so that it can truly be the light of the world. The church is also called to care for those who have been harmed by these scandals. Behind every headline, there are actual people who are suffering, who are frequently invisible. Prayer is essential in this moment, because it's easy to slip into anger and bitterness. Because of the failures of leaders, victims of abuse, people who gave selflessly to ministries are now embroiled in scandal, staff members who silently struggle with what to do, and viewers who feel deceived. The church must not ignore their pain. Instead, it must listen, care, and walk with them toward healing. And cynicism when trust is betrayed, but God calls his people to bring their hurt to him, asking for wisdom, healing, and justice. Pray for the leaders to choose humility and repentance when necessary. Pray for victims to find peace and restoration. Pray for the church to rise with a renewed commitment to integrity, rejecting anything that does not align with Christ's heart. They need encouragement, especially during a time when trust in leadership feels uncertain. Let's encourage them in prayer and support, reminding them that faithfulness matters even if it is not always evident. Believers should seek out and support ministries and leaders who are upholding these values. There are many who serve quietly, choose honesty over popularity, protect the weak, and lead with humility. Every believer is called to integrity, not just public figures. It's about how you live in your home, workplace, and church community. It's about speaking the truth, standing up for justice, and refusing to remain silent when wrongdoing goes unpunished. It's about modeling Jesus in your daily decisions by being kind, honest, and loving, even when things are difficult. What happened at Daystar serves as a reminder that the church is made up of people are flawed, but it also serves as a reminder that Jesus is flawless, and that we should follow him rather than celebrities, networks, or platforms. The church's mission is too significant to be overshadowed by scandal. The world needs Jesus' hope, and it must see that hope manifested in the lives of his followers.